Section 59 of English Synonyms and Antonyms. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mario Pineda. English Synonyms and Antonyms by James Champlin Fernald. Shelter to slander. Shelter. Synonyms: cover, defend, guard, harbor, protect, screen, shield, ward. Anything is covered over which something is completely extended. A vessel is covered with a lid, the head is covered with a hat. That which covers may also defend or protect. Thus, troops interposed between some portion of their own army and the enemy are often called a covering party. To shelter is to cover so as to protect from injury or annoyance, as the roof shelters from the storm, woods shelter from the heat. To defend, Latin defendere, to strike away, implies the actual. Protect, Latin protegere, to cover before, implies the possible use of force or resisting power. Guard implies sustained vigilance with readiness for conflict. We defend the person or thing against actual attack. We guard or protect against possible assault or injury. A powerful person may protect one who is weak by simply declaring himself his friend. He defends him by some form of active championship. An inanimate object may protect, as a garment, from cold. Defend is used but rarely, and by somewhat violent metaphor in such connection. Protect is more complete than guard or defend. An object may be faithfully guarded or bravely defended in vain, but that which is protected is secure. To shield is to impose something over or before that which is assailed, so as to save from harm, and has a comparatively passive sense. One may guard another by standing armed at his side, defend him by fighting for him, or shield him from a missile or a blow by interposing his own person. Harbor is generally used in an unfavorable sense. Confederates or sympathizers harbor a criminal. A person harbors evil thoughts or designs. See cherish. Compare synonyms for hide, defense. Antonyms: betray, cast out, expel, expose, give up, refuse, reject, surrender. Prepositions: shelter under a roof from the storm, in the fortress, behind or within the walls from attack. Sign. Synonyms: emblem, indication, manifestation, mark, note, omen, presage, prognostic, signal, symbol, symptom, token, type. A sign, Latin signum, is any distinctive mark by which a thing may be recognized or its presence known, and may be intentional or accidental, natural or artificial, suggestive, descriptive, or wholly arbitrary. Thus, a blush may be a sign of shame. The footprint of an animal is a sign that it has passed. The sign of a business house now usually declares what is done or kept within, but formerly might be an object having no connection with the business, as the sign of the trout. The letters of the alphabet are signs of certain sounds. While a sign might be involuntary and even unconscious, a signal is always voluntary and is usually concerted. A ship may show signs of distress to the casual observer, but signals of distress are the distinct appeal for aid. A symptom is a vital phenomenon resulting from a diseased condition. In medical language, a sign is an indication of any physical condition, whether morbid or healthy. Thus, a hot skin and rapid pulse are symptoms of pneumonia. Dullness of some portion of the lungs under percussion is one of the physical signs. Compare augur, characteristic, emblem. Sin. Synonyms: crime, criminality, delinquency, depravity, evil, fault, guilt, ill-doing, immorality, iniquity, misdeed, offense, transgression, ungodliness, unrighteousness, vice, viciousness, wickedness, wrong, wrongdoing. Sin is any lack of holiness, any defect of moral purity and truth, whether in heart or life, whether of commission or omission. All unrighteousness is sin. 1 John verses 17. Transgression, as its etymology indicates, is the stepping over a specific enactment, whether of God or man, ordinarily by overact, but in the broadest sense, in volition or desire. Sin may be either act or state. Transgression is always an act, mental or physical. Crime is often used for a flagrant violation of right, but the technical sense denotes a specific violation of human law. Guilt is the cert of an exposure to punishment because of sin. Depravity denotes not any action, but a perverted moral condition from which any act of sin may proceed. Sin, in the generic sense, as denoting a state of heart, is synonymous with depravity. In the specific sense, as in the expression a sin, the term may be synonymous with transgression, crime, offense, misdeed, etc., or may denote some moral activity that could not be characterized by terms so positive. Immorality denotes outward violation of the moral law. Sin is thus the broadest word, and immorality next in scope. All crimes, properly so called, and all immoralities are sins, but there may be sin as ingratitude, which is neither crime, transgression, nor immorality, and there may be immorality, which is not crime, as falsehood. Compare criminal. Antonyms: blamelessness, excellence, godliness, goodness, holiness, innocence, integrity, morality, purity, rectitude, right, righteousness, sinlessness, uprightness, virtue. Compare synonyms for virtue. Sing. Synonyms: carol, chant, chirp, chirrup, hum, warble. To sing is primarily and ordinarily to utter a succession of articulate musical sounds with the human voice. The word has come to include any succession of musical sounds. We say the bird of the rivulet sings. We speak of the singing quality of an instrument, and by a still wider extension of meaning we say the tea kettle or the cricket sings. To chant is to sing in solemn and somewhat uniform cadence. Chant is ordinarily applied to non-metrical religious compositions. To carol is to sing joyously, and to warble, kindred with whirl, is to sing with thrills or quavers, usually also with the idea of joy. Carol and warble are especially applied to the singing of birds. To chirp is to utter a brief musical sound, perhaps often repeated in the same key as by certain small birds, insects, etc. To chirrup is to utter a somewhat similar sound. The word is often used of a brief, sharp sound uttered as a signal to animate or rouse a horse or other animal. To hum is to utter murmuring sounds with somewhat monotonous musical cadence, usually with closed lips. We speak also of the hum of machinery, etc. Skeptic. Synonyms: agnostic, atheist, deist, disbeliever, doubter, freethinker, infidel, unbeliever. The skeptic doubts divine revelation. The disbeliever and the unbeliever reject it. The disbeliever with more of intellectual dissent, the unbeliever in the common acceptation, with indifference or with opposition of heart as well as of intellect. Infidel is an opprobrious term that might once almost have been said to be geographical in its range. The Crusaders called all Mohammedans infidels, and were so called by term in return. The word is commonly applied to any decided opponent of an accepted religion. The atheist denies that there is a God. The deist admits the existence of God, but denies that the Christian scriptures are a revelation from him. The agnostic denies either that we do know or that we can know whether there is a God. Antonyms: believer, Christian. Sketch. Synonyms: brief, design, draft, drawing, outline, picture, plan, skeleton. A sketch is a rough, suggestive presentation of anything, whether graphic or literary, commonly intended to be preliminary to a more complete or extended treatment. An outline gives only the bounded or determining lines of a figure or a scene. A sketch might give not only lines, but shading and color, but is hasty and incomplete. The lines of a sketch are seldom so full and continuous as those of an outline, being, like the shading or color, little more than indications or suggestions according to which a finished picture may be made. The artist's first representation of a sunset, the hues of which to change rapidly, must of necessity be a sketch. Draft and plan apply especially to mechanical drawing, of which outline, sketch, and drawing are also used. A plan is strictly a view from above, as of a building or machine, giving the lines of a horizontal section originally at the level of the ground, now in a wider sense at any height, as a plan of the cellar, a plan of the attic. A mechanical drawing is always understood to be in full detail. A draft is an incomplete or unfinished drawing. A design is such a preliminary sketch as indicates the object to be accomplished or the result to be attained, and is understood to be original. One may make a drawing of any well-known mechanism or a drawing from another man's design, but if he says the design is mine, he claims it as his own invention or composition. In written compositions, an outline gives simply the main divisions, and in the case of a sermon is often called a skeleton. A somewhat fuller suggestion of illustration, treatment, and style is given in a sketch. A lawyer's brief is a succinct statement of the main facts involved in a case, and of the main heads of his argument on points of law, with reference to authorities cited. The brief has none of the vagueness of a sketch, being sufficiently exact and complete to form, on occasion, the basis of the decision of the court with oral argument, when the case is said to be submitted on brief. Compare design. Skillful. Synonyms: accomplished, adept, adroit, apt, clever, deft, dexterous, expert, handy, happy, ingenious, practiced, proficient, skilled, trained. Skillful signifies possessing and using readily practical knowledge and ability, having alert and well-trained faculties with reference to a given work. One is adept in that for which he has a natural gift improved by practice. He is expert in that of which training, experience, and study have given him a thorough mastery. He is dexterous in that which he can do effectively, with or without training, especially in work of the hand or bodily activities. In the case of the noun, an expert denotes one who is experienced in the fullest sense, a master of his branch or knowledge. A skilled workman is one who has thoroughly learned his trade, though he might be naturally quite dull. A skillful workman has some natural brightness, ability, and power of adaptation, in addition to his acquired knowledge and dexterity. Compare clever, dexterity, power. Antonyms: awkward, bungling, clumsy, helpless, inexpert, maladroit, shiftless, unhandy, unskilled, untaught, untrained. Prepositions: skillful at or in a work, with a pen or tool of any kind. Slander: asperse, backbite, calumniate, decry, defame, depreciate, disparage, libel, malign, revile, traduce, vilify. To slander a person is to utter a false and injurious report concerning him. To defame is specifically and directly to attack one's reputation. To defame by spoken words is to slander, by written words to libel. To asperse is, as it were, to bespatter with injurious charges. To malign is to circulate studied and malicious attacks upon character. To traduce is to exhibit one's real or assumed traits in an odious light. To revile or vilify is to attack with vile abuse. To disparage is to represent one's admitted good traits or acts as less praiseworthy than they would naturally be thought to be, as, for instance, by ascribing immense benevolence to a desire for popularity or display. To libel or slander is to make an assault upon character and repute that comes within the scope of law. The slander is uttered, the libel written, printed, or pictured. To backbite is to speak something secretly to one's injury. To calumniate is to invent as well as utter the injurious charge. One may abuse, assail, or vilify another to his face. He asperses, calumniates, slanders, or traduces him behind his back. Antonyms: defend, eulogize, extol, laud, praise, vindicate. End of section 59.